So a daily mood log is, I would say it's the building block of everything that we do in a session. So if you imagine, if we follow our team model, if I'm working with somebody in a therapy session, we've already done testing, so we know how they're feeling that day. We've used lots of empathy, so I'll just be letting them tell me about the problems that are on their mind that probably came up when they took that brief mood survey. And then I'm going to move into assessment of resistance. And the first step of that is going to be, what do you want to do at this point in your session? Do you want to talk more and have me listen and give you lots of empathy and support? Or would you like to work on something today where we would be rolling up our sleeves and getting to work on you feeling better? Those are both equally valid options. What do you want to do? And I just kind of sit with open hands and they get to guide what's going to come next. And then if they say, well, I want to work on something, great. And if it turns out that something is a mood problem, then what we're going to do is pull out this blank form called a daily mood log. And the first step on a daily mood log is, okay, you told me that you've been struggling a lot with anxiety and that's what's really bothering you today. So and it's social anxiety, right? Like you feel really uncomfortable talking to people and you avoid going to parties or making eye contact with people when you're, in a public setting, whatever it is that's been going on. Now what I want to do is take that broad topic of like social anxiety and really focus down on one moment in time when that was a problem for you. And we're talking about like a few minutes, right? Where anxiety was like really high. And, where were you? Who was there? What was going on? And when was it? Right? And so we write that at the top of the mood log. And then the way that the mood log is laid out, the next thing on there is going to be the things that you were feeling. So we have a bunch of different categories of just feeling words. Like maybe you were feeling depressed, down, sad, unhappy. So we would circle the words in that category that fit for you. And how strongly did you feel those things between 0 and 100%? And then we would look at anxious feelings, or incompetent, defective, worthless. There's a whole bunch of different categories of feelings on the mood log, but what it does is we go into a lot of detail about what you were feeling and how strongly you were feeling it in that moment, so that I start to really understand what this moment was like for you, and you get to understand it really well too. It's a way of like just really understanding what is going on in myself when I'm feeling really poorly. So after we get all of the feelings recorded and how strongly you were feeling them, then we move on to the thoughts that caused those feelings. And those could be, let's say somebody was really anxious in a social setting. Maybe I'm telling myself things like, nobody is going to want to talk to me. Or I'm going to say something really stupid and make a fool out of myself. Or I'm no good at talking to people. This is going to just keep happening. Every time I go to a party, I'm going to freak out and I'm going to leave early and not talk to anybody. Right? So these are the thoughts that I'm telling myself. And then, so we write those down. And then we also write down like the percent of belief that the person probably had in those thoughts at the time that they were upset. So they rate that between 0 and 100. Yeah, I'm telling myself, nobody here wants to talk to me. And when I'm feeling like that, 100 out of 100 of anxiety, I believe that thought probably like 85%, right? So we record all that. And then we kind of shift gears and we start to look at this assessment of resistance idea a little bit more closely. And we start to think of these negative feelings and these thoughts that you had in, let's say, a social occasion where you were really slammed with anxiety. We look at those things not as things that are wrong with you, but as things that are right with you. How were those feelings and thoughts helping you in that moment? What were the advantages of them? And what did they show about you that's really positive or beautiful that you would think and feel that way in that moment? And we use this tool called positive reframing. So let's imagine if you were the person who was feeling really anxious in a social setting and you're telling yourself, I'm no good at talking to people, right? Okay, well, how does telling yourself that help you? Well, when I tell myself I'm no good at talking to people, it'll probably keep me from saying stupid things and making a big mistake and embarrassing myself. Okay, great, let's write that down as an idea. We'll kind of create this table to record all of the ways that the thoughts and feelings are helping me, right? Or maybe it makes me really careful about what I say so that I don't embarrass myself and say something foolish in front of people. Okay, and what does that show about your values that's really positive? Well, I care about what other people think of me, right? I don't want to look foolish. Or I care about how the way that I talk to other people affects them, right? I don't want to make other people uncomfortable or make them feel kind of awkward or embarrassed because of my mistakes. We bring all these things to conscious awareness, and pretty soon I'm kind of on the side of not changing, right? So, let's say we go through all that positive reframing, and now we've got like a good list of like 20 or 30 good reasons for you to be feeling anxious and sad and incompetent and embarrassed and foolish and hopeless, right? We're seeing all those negative feelings as actually helping you and showing really beautiful things about you as a person. All those things that you wrote down, are those things real, or are we just kind of making up some nonsense to put on a form? Oh, it's real. Okay. And is it powerful? Yeah, so why would you ever want me to help you feel less anxious in a social setting, right? And then now the patient's got to fight for change and convince me of why it's really important for them to feel differently. And, they might say something along the lines of, well, yeah, it's got some benefits, but the problem is that I hate being around people, and I avoid being around people, and it's totally ruining my life, all this fear that I have. And it costs me friendships, it keeps me from dating people, I lose out on opportunities at work. So actually, it's really important that all this anxiety goes down. And so what I've done is I've had them convince me of that, rather than the opposite is probably what's happening with everybody else in their life. All their family members are telling them why, hey, you need a therapist, like go get some help, dude, right? And I'm doing the opposite. I'm saying you got to convince me, because when I look at all of the positive things that we just talked about, it sounds like you should keep just staying the way that you are. And now they've convinced me of why they must change. The other beautiful thing about positive reframing is that it goes along this whole idea that sometimes accepting ourselves exactly the way that we are without changing at all can be the most profound change we could ever make. Because usually when somebody is struggling with anxiety or depression, they spend a lot of time like beating themselves up for having some kind of a mental illness problem. Right, and telling themselves, I shouldn't feel so bad about myself, or I shouldn't be sad all the time, or I shouldn't be afraid to go to the mall, whatever it is. And when we positively reframe all those things, and we actually kind of help the person fall in love with their symptoms, right? Like let's embrace them, let's celebrate them. How is it helpful and really awesome that you think and feel this way? It's this idea of radical acceptance of themselves that can be a huge part of their change. And then what all that does is it just melts away resistance to change. So then now we come back to this mood log and we look at methods that are going to help them change the way that they've been thinking and feeling.